received a cost of living increase for many years. This is from the audience. What, if anything, will you do to address this?
I switched up on us, all right.
Well,
So, yeah, no, that's fine. So, you know, Capers is it's an interesting situation where for the longest, it was in a very bad position. It had a huge unfunded liability, and we've spent a lot of time and effort to get it to a good standard. We had it to 81%. It was at a point then we could actually talk about a cost of living adjustment. And then they changed the return rate to 6%. That dropped us from 81 down to 72. And so now you got to build it all the way back up to get it to 80. That is something we should and will discuss this year about what are the different options that are out there to potentially provide some form of a cost of living. It's something we will consider it as it goes. But again, with all these other tax things and everything else we're talking about, it has to be done in a responsible manner. And I understand. I mean, I'm a retiree. I live on a retiree's budget, and I understand where their situation is, and I'm sympathetic for sure.
Staying in District 8, Pam Schernig, what would you do to address the fact that Capers has not received a cost of living increase for, I think, nearly 30 years?
Thank you. Yes, well, I think I am.
Maybe scoot a little closer to the microphone, just a little bit.
I think I'm the only, excuse me, is that better?
Yeah.
I think I'm the only retiree from Blue Valley Schools that we have on the panel, and other than Dr. Benson earlier, I think I'm probably one of the only candidates that has retired from a public school system. I draw Capers, and I retired in 2015, and no, there has not been an increase. Fortunately, we're blessed that we don't live off of my salary, we live off of my husband's, so it's not that big a deal to me, but it's a really big deal to a lot of our teachers. It's also a big deal to these young teachers who we're trying to incentivize to go into the teaching field. We need to give them a reason to want to be a teacher and to stay in the classroom. Give them something that they can look forward to, give them something to know that they're valued. We need to do better for our teachers. The retention of those teachers is critical, and being able to fully fund that Capers is, I think, a huge piece of being able to draw teachers.
Now going to the District 48 race, Dan Osmond, the question from the audience about Capers not having seen a cost of living increase for many years. What would you do to address this if re-elected in your case?
Yeah. So right now, over the last several years that I've been in office, we've actually been blessed to have budget surpluses in the billions of dollars. My first term there, I was serving on insurance and pensions, and we actually took some of that money and put it into the Capers fund. It was originally supposed to be $1 billion. We moved it up in amendments to about $1.5 billion and helped to stop drawing from the Bank of KDOT, which is going to save us a lot of money. Both of those things are going to save us a lot of money in the long run. In terms of cost of living increases, yes, absolutely, I would be in favor of that. And we are right now blessed again to continue to have budget surpluses, and being able to draw into that, provide the services that we do, and cost of living increases. As I said, I'm in favor of it. The other option that we've been talking about is maybe moving from Capers 3 back down to Capers 2. And so I'm in favor of exploring that as well.
Ending this question with Randy Ross, remaining in the District 48 race, addressing the cost of living increase for Capers. Where do you stand on that, and how would you want to address that if elected?
You know, people who work their entire lives for the state shouldn't get locked into just one rate of return or payment from Capers. And that's really unfortunate, particularly in the case of teachers whose salary wasn't that strong to begin with. And those who stayed with it realized they could have made more in the private sector. So now they're in retirement, they're getting their Capers, but it's staying flat. They're not going to get the cost of living increases. Other states do it differently. I believe Missouri does provide cost of living increases. I was talking with a couple where the woman retired in Kansas, but her husband had taught in Missouri, and so they were getting an increase. You know, it's not fair. Let's control our budget. Let's do a better job of budgeting like they wanna do. And let's see what other monies we can put into Capers to reward the people who deserve it.
One final question before we go into closing statements. Orders falling to Pam Chernick in the District 8 race. This is also from the audience. Many people worried about the brain drain from Kansas, people moving away, not coming back. How can we grow our state's workforce and bring skilled workers to Kansas is the question from the audience. So how can we grow our state's workforce and bring skilled workers to Kansas? 1 minute, Pam Chernick.
Well, I think bringing our young people back to Kansas is a problem. I've got 2 sons, both of them live on the East Coast, and they're making really great salaries on the East Coast. My youngest son is gay. He does not feel like Kansas is welcoming to him or his husband. I think there are a lot of issues that Kansas needs to address. We need to continue with incentivizing our young people to go into fields that will not only benefit the state, but that they can have success with later on. And we need to make it welcoming here for the kids, for the young people. I think we need to find a way to help with childcare. That's a huge problem here with our young people. And it's also very expensive on the East Coast, but that's a problem that we need to address. We need to find a way to make it easier for our young people to live here and want to come back here.
As the question moves on to the District 48 race, Dan Osmond, how can we grow our state's workforce and bring skilled workers to Kansas, make the state an attractive place for young people and workers to be?
I'd like to think that we have been making Kansas attractive to workers to come in here. So over the last several years, the governor, and particularly the lieutenant governor, has had what's called the golden shovel. That is, the more business is coming in per capita to the state of Kansas than pretty much any other state in the nation. And that happens because we're working to try to make sure that there are good schools, good communities, and good businesses coming into the state of Kansas. How do we make it better? Let's start with number 1. So I serve on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development. And one of the biggest things we talk about is childcare. Childcare being a workforce-related issue. The single biggest workforce-related issue. When you have 2 kids and you have to make a determination, do I stay home from the workforce to take care of my kids, or do I send my kids to childcare and spend the same amount of money? That's a no-win situation for any parent. Medicaid expansion as well would help every man, woman, and child in the state of Kansas to help bring more dollars to the pocketbook and help their health care needs.
Staying in District 48, Randy Ross, how can we grow our state's workforce and bring skilled workers to Kansas?
Couple of things. Number 1, remember how we talked about our communities? Nice neighborhoods, good schools, moderate cost of living. That's what attracts people, and when they get here, that's what keeps them. So, that's one place to start. The second place, and actually the Chamber of Commerce just kicked off this program a couple of months ago, but it is outreach to former Kansans, reminding them about the great things of the state that they grew up in, and inviting them to return. So it's bringing in business so that people have a place to work, keeping our businesses here, and then keeping the surrounding community of schools, neighborhoods, cost of living very manageable and welcoming to people, to get them to return, and those who are graduating to stay.
And finishing this question back in the District 8 race, Chris Croft, how can we grow our state's workforce, bring skilled workers to Kansas?
Yeah, thanks. And it is right, we are growing businesses, and that's because we've set the environment for that. Our chair has set that with the Commerce Secretary and moved forward with that. However, our population is not growing. It is declining. A lot of that has to do with the amount of taxes they pay. We funded a program for the Commerce Department to tell everybody about the state of Kansas and why it's good. You're right, childcare it's right now 17% of people's salary. It's supposed to be less than 7%. We were just at an event yesterday with a roundtable of business leaders. And the one thing the study came back from Kaufman and the other folks that are doing it is that the regulatory environment is causing this issue. This is not a legislative issue. This is a regulatory issue that has to be resolved. And we'll work through that. But one of the biggest thing I think is that we've got to stop talking negatively about this state. This state is not a flyover state. This state is a state of champions. This state is a state that is a wonderful place to be. It has very limited traffic. It's got wonderful people. That's what we have to sell people on. Sell them on the vision of Kansas. Let's be leaders for that.
And let's have closing statements for each of these. The order is falling back down to Dan Osmond in the District 48 race, so we'll start there and go back around. So give each of you a chance to give one final message to voters in the room as well as online. So we'll start in District 48. Closing statements.
Thank you very much. In my time in the legislature, a lot of people talk about the animosity there, and there is animosity, but in terms of what people really want, is to set partisan bickering aside and actually work with both parties. And I have that experience working with both parties. I've worked on resolutions, I've worked on bills that have been unanimously supported by the House and the Senate, including civil asset forfeiture just this last year. There are quite a number of things that I want to be able to work on next year as well. And that includes education funding, that includes healthcare and reducing healthcare costs, that includes lowering property taxes. And those are things that I have a unique skill set to be able to do, and I want to go back in and actually work on it. As I said, I'm one of only 7 attorneys in the state, in the Kansas House, and only 2 on the Democratic side. And it is a unique skill set that I bring to the table that I want to continue to bring for the state of Kansas.
Staying in District 48, Randy Ross, your closing statement.
Thank you, and Kyle, thank you, and thanks to the Johnson County Post and our timer over here, Tim Stalling. But seriously, thank you very much for making this available. I'm glad everyone's here. What I want to see happen next year when I represent House District 48, I want to continue to focus on those 3 things I was talking about. Fully funding education and making sure that it's accountable to its stakeholders, especially teachers, but also students, parents, and the community. And number 2 is fiscal responsibility. If we want to lower taxes, we have to deal with our budget. And that's where it begins. And cybersecurity, we have people that are always trying to steal data, resources from us. We need to harden those targets because they cost us real money. I look forward and appreciate your questions, and I ask you for your vote.
And closing statements now on the 2 candidates in District 8. We'll start with Chris Croft.
Yeah.
Your closing statement.
Again, thanks for having us here. Some things that didn't get covered in it was just hit on budgeting. We've created a new budgeting process, and the legislature is now taking back over our responsibility of budgeting, which we gave away 25 years ago. Something that wasn't addressed is that we've increased rebasing for our senior living facilities and our reimbursement rates for Medicaid, for our Medicaid doctors, which hadn't been done in years. We go back to the taxes and hear about, budget surpluses and things. Again, the one thing I hear at the door every day are taxes, property taxes, taxes. This surplus is their tax dollars we can give back to them so they can afford to put food on the plate, or on the table. As was commented, thank you about the civility comment. I agree with that. This is not Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a mess. Here, this is Kansas. We actually work with each other. 86% of the bills, actually, we all agree on, or at least in some form or fashion, in a bipartisan manner. There's not a bill that I work on that I don't have somebody coming in and talking about it. So I appreciate everybody coming in, and I'll get to that point. And by the way, we talked earlier about transparency. This is our transparency documents to you. The better way, this is what we accomplished for you, the people of Kansas. We promised you we were going to do it, and this is us delivering on that promise. Thank you, sir.
And rounding out the closing statements in District 8, Pam Sherman.
Thank you. My opponent has made it clear what he stands for. He voted yes on the bill that put the anti-abortion constitutional amendment on our ballot in August of 22, with no exception for the life of the mother, rape, or incest. He has repeatedly supported school vouchers, and just this past session, he voted against repealing our constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. And finally, he is endorsed and funded by the NRA. In contrast, I've been an advocate for our public schools for decades. I support a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions. My youngest son is gay, and I take offense to my opponent's suggestion that legislators have a right to decide who people love and marry. I am endorsed by groups like Everytown that promote gun safety in our schools and community. So you know what I stand for. The question is, when you go to the polls in the coming weeks, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, you're gonna have to ask yourself, what do you stand for?
We'll give them a round of applause for their participation in sitting in the today. Thank you to the candidates again for staying late, staying into the evening, giving your time, sharing your views. Again, all that I would say for voters watching online, you have until October 15th to register to vote. Of course, election day itself is November 5th. Early voting starts on October 18th, that's a Saturday. So however you do it, when you do it, get out and vote. Thank you so much for watching this forum at the Johnson County.
When did you say early voting started?
October 18th.
October 19th.
October 8th.
Saturday.
This is Saturday.
Saturday in October.
Thank you.
You should have given me a chance to rebut that.
Well, nice to sit there.
Thank you.
Are you part of the post group?
No, I am not. I'm just an independent citizen of Johnson County. I like to share videos of public meetings, especially candidate forums with my neighbors, and maybe send some hard questions to the politicians. Same here. Do not worry about walking in front of me.
Are you sure?
I'm serious. It's
I'm
totally
like cutting
fine.
you off while you're filming.
This is
I
your
feel real
forum.
bad. Okay.
If you need a shot, take the shot. It's
Okay,
fine.
thanks.
Please.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Announce it, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Pardon me.
I forgot to grant my stuff.